Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Don't Tell Me How to Fan. Didn't you guys just put out an episode? Yes, we did, but we're back. I'm Josh Albrecht. That's John Taylor, and we are doing this because the NFL draft happens tomorrow. And so everyone is talking about the draft and what's going to be happening in Green Bay. You're seeing all these people on X, Twitter, as I like to call it, saying, just got to Green Bay, looking forward to going to Green Bay. Everyone is going to Green Bay for the draft. And so let's talk draft. Let's talk about what the Packers should do, what they might do, and what they'll probably end up doing in regards to the NFL draft, which starts tomorrow, being Thursday. I will start by saying the expert in this is going to be John. John loves the draft. He's been doing a ton of draft stuff. I feel like, like when you're in school and you're like, okay, this subject is just not for me. Like, this isn't going to be what I go into in life. That's me with the draft. And I think part of it, John, is I have spent too much time over the last 7 or 8 years, even longer, doing the work, thinking about who I want the Packers to take, who it makes sense for them to take, and then seeing them do the exact opposite. And then it gets so frustrating for me of just going, none of this matters. I can think all this. I can analyze what's the best. And then they're going to just always do something completely different. I can't remember the last time that I've talked to someone who said, boom, that's exactly who I wanted them to take in the first round, and they took him. I can't remember that conversation ever happening.
Yeah. Well, first of all, hello, Josh. That's the longest preamble we've done so far, and I love it. I'm going to do a lot of the talking this episode, it feels like, so that's fine to get that out of the way.
I just wanted to get that out of the way.
Yeah. This is my, academic bowl. Let's call it that. It's a fair point. I think it's unhealthy for fans to ignore the process that the Packers clearly have, the thresholds that they like, and the historic hit rates and tendencies they tend to follow in the interest of falling in love with one specific player. I think any fan who is setting themselves up for that type of attachment to a single player is begging to get their feelings hurt. A la Jackson Smith and Jigba, a la Chris Olave, a la, you can catch my drift. These are all wide receivers in the first round. Do I think this is the year that the Packers take a wide receiver in the first round? That depends. We might talk about that more further.
Okay.
But I'll circle back to this point. I don't attach myself to any one particular player. I try to find 3 or 4 players in positions of need I think they need to fill, as well as just tried and true facts that the Packers are going to draft. And I try to get well informed. Perfect example. Did I think Jordan Morgan was going to get drafted in the first round last year? No. Ultimately, when that pick came in, was I surprised? Also, no. He was a Packers type through and through. They liked his length. They liked his ability to kick inside. They started him at right guard. He's going to press Rasheed Walker for left tackle this year. This is what the Packers do on the line. So it's when you're talking about process late in the draft, where the Packers always seem to be picking in the first round, you kind of have to start framing it's best value. It's not even best player. It's a lot of the times it's going to be best value in accomplishing what they want to accomplish or need to accomplish. So, that's just my counter preamble to yours is I'm never too surprised because I trust the Packers historical hit rate. And you can say whatever you want about Goody in the first. I think they like to take swings on big projects. Rashawn Gary's, LVNs. Do I think LVN needs to play better this year? Absolutely. To the point where I don't even know if you re-sign him. But I understand the process. And that's because they like what they like and they're perfectly comfortable betting on traits over production. So, and that'll be a huge conversation that we have throughout today is traits and physicality or, attributes versus production and where I think they're going to go from there. But so I guess the first big question is, do I think this is the year that the Packers are going to draft a wide receiver? I think positionally where they're at and where the board might shake down, I think, and don't hold me to this, this feels like the most likely draft that a guy will fall to the Packers that they would be happy taking. I can launch into some names. I've been hearing and seeing a lot of like pundit mock drafts that there's a lot of interest in Tetero McMillan. He is the wide receiver out of Arizona. He's considered to be the number one wide receiver in the entire draft. I think given the way the board shakes out, I think this really is probably the only trade up scenario I could see the Packers getting involved with. I think if you look at the mock draft, not the mock draft, the draft order, I think you could probably, I think realistically, your first real threat of losing the number one wide receiver on the draft really is probably the Seattle Seahawks, right? They traded away DK. They got rid of, they cut Lockett. They like JSN. And I think that Tet, that's what people call him for short, Tet McMillan, is a sure doubter outside wide receiver in this league.
Okay, question. First of all, doesn't it kind of make you feel bummed? Maybe I'm just naive to where our receiving core is, but didn't it feel like it was 2 years ago that we had this, like, wide receiver was the least of the concerns? Like, we had all these young guns that were balling out for Jordan Love that we were like, these guys are just going to get better. Like, our wide receiving core is freaking set. And now it's the number one concern. Like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's very hard for me as a fan to grasp at the idea that that position has gone from the most solidified to the least solidified.
Sure. I don't think it's the least solidified. I think in terms of trading up, as in the Packers giving away assets to get ahead in the draft, I think there are bigger positions in need. But if you could trade up to, let's say, to the 18, to 17, to the Bengals, if Tet McMillan is still sitting there at 17 or 18 and I'm Goody, I'm starting to think, oh, shit, I might be able to get the best wide receiver in this entire draft. That's a different conversation than filling a need at wide receiver. You know what I mean? You're talking about...
You're getting the best available and a position of need.
Right.
Two birds, one stone.
Yeah. And not best available, best considered. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If it's still there. So that's what I mean. I don't think that they would sell the farm to get up in the top 10 to make sure they could draft him. Tomorrow could happen, and I could see him getting drafted by the Panthers at 8, and I go, that makes perfect sense. But I've seen enough mocks. I've seen enough questions. There's some reports coming out that he really kind of turned it on for the scouts, and maybe he phones it in a bit during practices. I don't want to plug other podcasts, but it sounds like Evan Williams has been doing interviews, and Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers was saying that, like, Evan Williams talks about Tet, and he's like, it's very interesting. So I'm excited to hear that. So if there is some character concerns, this is when you start seeing the potential of players backsliding. So my big point is the wide receiver room did not progress like we thought it would. I don't think there's very few guys in the first round that I would say we should go after and get them. He's just the only trade up target, I think. Everything else, I think you let fall to 23, and then there's a lot of trade down situations that make a lot of sense. The big thing we should point out about this year's draft class is a lot of GMs, scouts, mock drafters, draft analysts, combine guys, like literally everyone is like, there isn't probably 20 blue chip players in this draft, but it's maybe the deepest class there's ever been. So you got to go, and this is going to be way too long to talk about this would have had to have been an ongoing series of us checking in weekly for me to really dive into this. But certain positions offer value in and of itself in the position on the team, but then also where they're drafting. So a big conversation like that would be like, if you don't get a wide receiver in the first round, or the first 2 rounds, you probably wouldn't need to want to start revisiting until probably like the 4th round, because that's when you get back in reaching territory. So, right. So depending on where you're picking and what you need, some types of these, there's gonna be a lot of edge rushers, day 2, day 3 edge rushers. So there's another reason why it's like, if the board breaks in a way for the Packers that they're staring at and they go, I really don't like how this is turning out, they might choose to draft a completely different position and then just go further down their board and get a best player available at that position later in the draft. That's what I'm saying. So that's the only big but I Peter Schrager puts out a mock draft. He's been known to be really in tune and correct, and he had the Packers taking Matthew Golden at 23. he got mocked a first round wide receiver. I will say this. I think that would be a hell of a pick. I don't expect Golden to be there at 23.
Why
think
not?
Because I think he's just in the same way. I haven't heard anything about him in particular that would make me think that it would fall. Most of the mocks that I've seen up until recently have had him and Teddarone McMillan being taken long before 23. And like I said, I don't think that there is.
So I just want to. So if it comes to wide receiver,
Yep.
How many are you saying? Are those the two? Are those the two that you think are worthy of being first round picks?
Well,
whether they get to 23 or not.
Yes, I would say so. There's
Okay.
but it's a nuanced conversation. So there are guys that I think could get drafted because teams will get desperate and they'll reach for a early second round player in the first round because they're not going to pick again later. Guys
but are those the two that you?
I think
those more than those two that you think are worthy of being drafted in the first round?
I think the Packers could draft Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State at the 23rd pick, and I think that would be a fantastic pick. It might be by consensus a reach. In some places, he has him. A lot of players have, or a lot of pieces have him as a late teens guy. I've seen some value him as low as the mid to late 30s. So all of this is kind of on a curve. All of it's in the flux.
Mhm.
Ultimately, like we can only really go off their combine scores, what you can see on tape, and then like what we as a public has agreed as like the relative athletic score, which is their testing measured up against every single one of their peers. So saying all that, I would be super happy with Emeka Egbuka. I think there is a concern that he's a big slot guy in college, but I think just like Justin Jefferson, I think he's somebody who could very easily produce on the boundary. Justin Jefferson does a lot outside. I think Emeka Egbuka could play outside. I think the Packers have already said that they believe Jayden Reed could be a threat on the boundary. And if they want to just bring in a guy who's just going to immediately elevate the floor of the wide receiver room by a lot, I think he's somebody who, while it might not make sense to take that early in the draft, if he's available, I think the Packers could and should go for it. So,
okay.
So the big things that I would say that are holding Matthew Golden back in my eyes and Egbuka would just be Matthew Golden never really was asked to block in college, and the Green Bay Packers very much prescribe no block, no rock. And they want guys who are going to come in and be willing. If you look at his tape on run plays, it's not that he can't do it or is unwilling. It's just that he was never asked to. College really, if it's not designed in the scheme, you're not going to see skill position players really kind of dig in the trenches and really set up those types of blocks. So I think the big report on Golden is that it's not that he can't, it's that he no one's asked him to. And I think the big thing with the drawback with Emeka Egbuka is we kind of already have a slot guy. I just think their versatility between the two of them, you just bring him in and you figure it out. You know what I mean? You just got to like get the room better. And I know and this is the last point on the wide receivers, because I think like these are the three guys that I think in the first round make the most sense. There is this conversation around, well, we were really all set until we weren't. But you have to remember, Christian Watson is gone. He's like truly our only like deep threat guy who makes the geometry of the offense.
We have McCole Hardman now. What are you talking about? We got McCole Hardman.
It's true, but it would be better than McCole Hardman, somebody who can get downfield and actually catch the ball. So,
okay.
So
we're looking for that. We're looking for someone that's doing both.
I think if we're going to spend a first round pick on a wide receiver, he should be able to catch the ball better than what McCole Hardman's done at present.
All right.
But that's kind of where I think the wide receivers stand. I think that if we want to go some late pick darlings, or I think at the end of the draft, we could do like a little 3-round mocker. And I can kind of tell you, I think if they don't take a wide receiver in the first round, it's not the end of the world. I think there's guys in the second round and third round who,
Goody's proven that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, exactly. And there's no reason not to think he can't hit, because historically he's been great. And
I'm still going to get mad at him.
Sure.
Regardless of what he does. That's part of my job as a fan.
Of course.
And then I'll eat my words in a year or two. And that's the process. We'll start it all over.
Totally. What position do you want to go into next? Because
I'm okay. So you started with wide receiver, but I want to know, and I think the biggest question is, what is the number one need? Like what is the position, even if we don't get the guy we're thinking, because that's what I think happens a lot, is that we're and maybe not even just with the Packers, just with teams, but we're like, okay, the best available linebacker is there. We're up. Oh my God, this is it. And then they take a guy that everyone had going in like the second or third round as their first pick. And we're going, well, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Case in point, Cooper DeJean last year, right? Everybody wanted
or
him in the
TJ
first.
Watt, however many years
right.
ago.
Yeah. That's so hard to answer for this particular draft because so I'll frame this a little bit more. I think the Packers need to figure out an answer in the defensive interior. They need to draft somebody who can play on the edge, and I think they need to start thinking about the cornerback situation. I think they're very excited about Hobbs. I almost called him Dobbs, so thanks for saying that. Nate Hobbs. I think they're positive with that. I think the Packers really like Keyshawn Nixon in the boundary. I don't know
that I do, but
he played pretty well. If you look at the end of the season when he got moved into the boundary, he played significantly better than people expected, and I think his outperform. If he plays truly all season on a boundary at $6 million a year, like that contract is gravy. So, so we'll see. So I think ultimately it comes back to, it just depends what's sitting there at 23, which I know is like a really stupid.
But I'm saying this is you are moving the cards. Right. You get to pick what position. Right. What position do you want to be there and be the one that is most important to filling a gap on this team?
Okay, I'm gonna hear. First of all, I hear you and I see your question. I'm gonna answer it how I want to because I think we might just circle this drain for a while.
Okay.
I think just like the wide receivers, I think you would be reaching at cornerback if you can't draft somebody who fell. I think there is a possibility with the way there's a lot of teams that need linemen, and I think a few linemen are going to go sooner than you think. You have to realize that teams will reach on quarterbacks if they're concerned that they're not going to fall. There's not a lot of great quarterbacks in this draft, and you might get a team trading back up. So you just never know, right? All of a sudden, like Shedeur Sanders could fall out of the first round, and everyone had him as like a top 5 pick. So just the way the board shakes, teams might move to get some big positions that you might not expect. So if these cornerbacks were there, much like the Tet conversation, this wouldn't be a trade up, but this is like, we weren't planning this, but these guys are here. I would say Jahdae Barron. Let me double check. Jahdae Barron. Why do you have to have such an interesting last name to spell? I think if he is available, he's from Texas. He's Dan Brugler's third best cornerback prospect. I think if he's available, he's somebody that they should look into drafting. He's a little bit on the smaller side, and he's kind of been pegged for the slot, and it poses some other questions. I just think he just immediately comes in as probably your best cornerback on the roster. So just like the wide receiver conversation about certain guys, you bring him in and you figure it out. I think the way Hafley likes to play the secondary, I think they could do a lot of very fun things and play some like positionless secondary in terms of
Does that not feel like the opposite of what Gutekunst does, though? It's always been draft and develop. Like, when was the last time we had a guy that truly was plug and play and impactful? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Especially on the defensive side.
I mean, they traded back up for Ja. I mean, he's probably, honestly, the last big one you talk about. Right. I mean, Eric Stokes came in and became the number 2 and had a fantastic rookie season. Those injuries decimated his athleticism. So It's not like it doesn't happen. I mean, Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker, despite all of your thoughts and feelings on their flaws, they came in and started. I mean, there
was a lot of examples. That was good.
Yeah. There is precedent for this. I will say the way Gutekunst talks about it, it doesn't seem like he's too interested in signing the 5th-year option for either Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt, but I think they're going to be looking at maybe opting out and then extending, a la Darnell Savage that they did. They did it with Jordan Love, but these guys have some question marks. But specifically Quay Walker, hearing the way the guys talk about him, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but they seem like they want him. So to stick around. So that might also inform the draft. As all these pieces come out, all of a sudden certain needs don't seem so needy. But Jahdae Barron is a guy, he's from Texas. He's projected at a first, second round. I think he's 5'10", so he's a little on the smaller side. but he does hit their weight requirement. They do not draft guys under 190 at cornerback. The last time they did was 1992. It was Terrell Buckley. And I guess Ja technically was like 189. They fudged that a little bit, but they're not drafting somebody 10 pounds lighter than how they've always drafted the position. I would eat this hat. And I'm saying that because I'm seeing a lot of reports that maybe Maxwell Hairston is generating some like end of first round buzz. He's a cornerback out of Kentucky. I think he's a fantastic player. I just don't think they want to draft a guy who at the combine, where what you're trying to measure at, is 5'11", 183 pounds. That means in college, he was probably playing in the late 170s. I just don't buy it. So anyways, I think Jahdae Barron, if he falls, I think that would be one. And I've seen this guy mocked to the Packers a few times, and he's Dane Brugler's second best cornerback, Will Johnson out of Michigan, which we are familiar because we've seen him. We've seen him in the Big Ten for a while. What I will say is Will Johnson has on the road to winning a championship 2 years ago faced the number one wide receiver on every single team. And there's some questions about production, some other things. All I know is that if you're talking about a guy who can hang with the best players in the world, he's somebody that's been doing it. So I wouldn't trade up for him because I just don't think it's worth it. And same thing with Jahdae Barron. But I think these are the two guys, if we're looking at cornerback, these are guys that I would go, I thought maybe they'd take this guy, but if they're sitting there, I would not be surprised. So that's my big one. Would you like me to move to my edge and we'll have a similar conversation? Yes. And I can speed this up a little bit. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
No, it's okay.
I think if Mykel Williams, and the more I'm seeing, the less I think it happens. Mykel Williams from where does he play? I forget. Is it Georgia? It's another Georgia guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
Mykel Williams. Yeah. Mykel Williams. He's from Georgia. Late first round, second. I mean, people have him going as early as like 8 to the Panthers. I mean, nobody knows what the Panthers can do, but they're just like
everyone's going 8 to the Panthers.
Shout out to my guy Andy. He's a Panthers fan, and I've been like, if they take this guy, I would not be surprised if they take this guy. But anyways, I've seen him go as early as that, and I've seen him fall to the Packers. And I think if somehow Mike Green is still there, that's a no doubt first picker. I think the most Packers-y pick in the entire draft is Shamar Stewart. I don't know if you're familiar with Shamar Stewart. He's from Texas A&M. He is a no doubt first rounder. There is a ton of questions about his ability to produce because he just straight up doesn't have great numbers. He got injured at the start of last season,
which is exactly why you
which is the
it.
most
which is the most
Packer pick
because it's going to cause most. First of all, D-line.
Yep.
Right. So not sexy. Just going to be like a classic, just another guy for the line. There's already question marks immediately, and there's things to criticize. So you add that all together, and it's a perfect Packers first round pick.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. He's like a little light for them. I think the league is moving to lighter defensive ends, and now that we're in a 4-3, I think that would be fine because I think our interior defensive line edge. Here's what I'll say: Shamar Stewart on the RAS scored a 9.99 out of 10. There's some like agility stuff, but we're talking about him maybe being the best tested edge rusher that's ever come out of the draft in terms of like physical attributes, his testing, his agilities. It's not bad at all. So he's a guy that I think if he falls, you just take him. You take him and you go happy. I bet on those traits 10 out of 10 times. I'd feel way better about that pick than even LVN, and he came from a school where there was some production. Big thing about him that I'll say, which I know a lot of people are concerned about, is that production. If you look at Texas A&M, they're in a conference where everyone spreads them wide. Like he was not asked to rush the quarterback. He was really just there to do his job, and the job he did. And I think that when you look at what he was able to accomplish in the few opportunities he had to pass rush, you have to like what you see there. So those are my big ones. Some honorable mentions there. There's Mike Green out of Marshall is like a no doubter. People say he might fall. There is some very gnarly allegations about like domestic abuse and spousal abuse.
Yeah.
And so I'm just hoping the Packers don't touch him. They tend to not take guys with that much going on. So I don't really know about that. Another late favorite to even maybe get drafted before the Packers is Donovan Ezeraku. He's an edge rusher from Boston College. So he played while Hafley was coach 2 years ago. He's another guy where I think, like, will he ever become your number one pass rusher? I don't think so, but I think he immediately makes that pass rush room significantly more dangerous. And
which is my number one concern.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
I
Yep.
want.
Yep.
That was the
I
most
agree.
frustrating thing to watch last season. And
Yep.
so if it's possible, looking at all the needs and everything else, not even looking at specific players, but just
Yep.
position. I asked you the question. I'm going to answer it.
Yeah.
I want that filled. I want to be able to watch a Packers team again where we have someone constantly creating pressure on the opposing quarterback. It was too frustrating to watch this defense last year never get to the quarterback.
Yep.
I hated it.
Yeah. What I will say to you, though, is there are some really nice guys in the second and third round. This is like the day 2, day 3 guys where if I would say, let's say Ezeraku, Williams, and Shamar Stewart are all off the board.
Mhm.
There's some conversations about James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, JT Tuamoawa, Landon Jackson, Jordan Birch. These are all guys that I think they'd be reaching. And I just think ultimately there's better answers. Like in day 2, if we saw Landon Jackson, I would feel good about it. I think JT Tuamaloa from Ohio State makes a lot of sense. Oluwafemi Oladejo from UCLA. He's a guy who has like a projected second to third round grade. I don't think he makes it to the third round. I think if they picked him up in the second, that would be awesome. And then a guy I really liked who I think like this is a guy who's like tape. Like I saw his RES, hadn't heard much about him. Ashton Jalot from Louisville. He's like a third round. And if you think you can lock him in with the 87th pick, I think you could maybe even see the Packers go wide receiver, cornerback, wide receiver, some sort of combination that you're not expecting, and them feeling like really happy with who they could land in the third round, particularly him, Braden Swinton, and I've seen like Savion Jones be like another guy. But there's a lot of guys in that third rounder range that I think could really come in and just probably leapfrog Kingsley and Igbare as your number 3 guy, and just hoping that the new defensive line coach makes our edge rush, tolerable.
Sure.
And there were some reports too that a lot of guys, I forget who just got let go. Man. Anyways, there was a report that came out that they were all like, this guy's awful. Why is he getting promoted to our D-line coach? And then he got fired the next season. So I'm not going to look it up. It was off-season news. Could have been I don't remember who it was, but they're not on the team anymore. So it seemed like the players were happy that they moved on. So you just never really know. So that's where I'm at with the edge rushers in the first round. The last big need that I think, and the only reason I'm going to say it's need is because unfortunately, if Kenny Clark just ain't that guy anymore, we're going to have to start looking at defensive interior players. They need to find somebody who can replace Kenny at the three technique. Like there's no way around it. I don't think he played up to his contract last year. I don't think you're going to hear anybody complain. And I think there's some like intriguing options at that 23 spot. I was a Derek Harmon truther almost this entire draft. And if they stuck and picked Derek Harmon at 23, I'd go, great. I felt like that for the first 3 months between when the Duck season ended to when 2 months ago. I think Derek Harmon buzz has died off simply because the pick makes so much sense. He's probably going to be available there. It's just a lot of like the media circus and headlines make us forget about clear cut and obvious choices. So he's my number 1. I went into this draft just being like, at 23, you just run the pick in with Derek Harmon. And depending on
so that's your number 1 want, or that's your number 1 what you think makes the most sense?
That's my number 1 want if nobody falls. So ignoring all of the guys I named as possible.
If the draft
fallback,
goes chalk, yeah.
If it goes chalk, I think you just run up Derek Harmon, because I don't want to reach on a James Pierce Jr. I don't want to reach on a Maxwell Hairston who is 183 pounds soaking wet. Like there's just a lot of reaches where I think Derek Harmon could probably replace. He could be your Devontae Wyatt replacement, and he's also good enough that he could be your Kenny Clark replacement. Like the guy is elite at interior pass defense. So you just draft somebody like that and you figure it out. He couldn't test because of injury, but everyone is pretty convinced that he's the second best defensive interior lineman. And we're talking about the only other guy being Mason Graham, which he's going to go in the top 10. No problem. So it just is what it is. So I think I've come around to, funny enough, the Michigan has another defensive interior lineman, Kenneth Grant. I think if they made that pick, that makes a ton of sense, and I'm super happy about it. I think the most Packers pick that I don't want to see happen, but just would not be surprised if it did happen, would be Walter Nolan, the Ole Miss defensive interior tackle. You know, he plays for Ole Miss. It's not the most aggressive conference, but you have to like his physical traits. I think he plays a little top heavy, which is a problem. So there's things that would need to be coached. He's just like the most raw ball of clay. And if we're going to talk about edge rushers that they like that could be molded, Walter Nolan is like the biggest one. I'm happy to see that in most of the draft mocks I've seen in the last 2 weeks, he's been going a lot earlier than 23.
Good,
he
get
just
him out of the way. Yeah,
I just want Derek Hartman. But this is what I'm saying. As a Packers fan, if they draft Walter Nolan, I go, they think Kenny Clark's going to be fine. They want Devontae Wyatt back. This is somebody who in 2 to 3 years is going to replace one or both of these guys. And
which is why it would be so frustrating, because not only are you, because even if you take Harmon, you're saying that like this is still a need for maybe next year. This isn't someone that's filling a void on the field come this August, September. Yeah. This is still you're working down the road. That's the only thing about that's frustrating for me, is that I feel like there's so many needs on this team that need to be filled now when we still have a good team, a growing team that should be better this year. It's not a draft and develop time. And also we're not set enough to where we can be worrying about, you know, who comes in because of injury or building for the future. So that's why I want to see him be more aggressive with getting
like
someone
I said,
who's going in now.
I think Derek Harmon or Kenneth Grant are solid choices to come in and affect. So defensive interior might not feel like it because of who we have there, but we need a penetrating 3 technique. We just need guys who can affect the pass rush with 4. And right now, Devontae Wyatt doesn't have it in his tool bag. And if Gary is not playing like the best edge rusher on the team, and LVN is in fact borderline bust territory, then we just need guys that can actually do it.
Sure.
So it really, you know, a lot of these guys I think are going to be great, but I think a lot of these guys are going to push players that are already here to figure it out, or they're just going to be good enough to start over them. And so ultimately, any of these guys I've just named would be fine. Some honorable mentions: Tyleik Williams, Shamar Turner, TJ Sanders. Those are 3 guys I think in the second round. If they really do want to attack defensive interior, I think that'd be a good one. I think a guy who could fall maybe in the 4th round, CJ West out of Indiana. He had a fantastic campaign his senior year. I think he was at the Senior Bowl and he performed really well. There's a lot of buzz around him, and he RAS'd out of his mind. So there are options, but if they'll tell you right away if they're really concerned about these guys or not by I think some of these picks. So that's kind of that's the kind of big ones. I mean, do I think they could draft an offensive tackle in the 1st round? Sure, but I it's kind of the same thing. I just trust them. I could tell you who I think they would maybe consider taking if they were there. But I don't really see the value in it right now, if I'm honest. I just think like
it's not as big of a need.
Yeah, but it could happen. But anyways, I don't actually want to spend the time. I think if Keldon Banks Jr. fell to them, I think there would be a very real conversation. I think it could be a situation that they would maybe draft him. But for now, I think that's kind of where I want to leave it. I just don't think it's in the cards. So,
okay, so I have some questions I want to fire at you.
Yeah.
So let's start with what is the one position that you want them to avoid at all possible costs, besides like kicker or something stupid, that you want them to avoid in the 1st round?
That I want them to avoid. It's Keldon Banks Jr. What position do I want them to avoid? I don't think they need a running back, but nobody drafts running backs anymore. They don't need a linebacker. I could see if I would be so surprised, I should say, if they took a linebacker. I think they definitely need to get some more bodies in there, because I'm concerned that Tyrone Hopper might have been a massive jump. I mean, he got drafted like 3 rounds earlier than everyone expected. So that kind of stuff makes me nervous. I don't think they need another tight end. I think Tucker Kraft's the guy. I think Luke Musgrave. But if like a Colston Loveland falls, I think he's the guy out of Michigan. He's on their board. I'm sure he is. He's a fantastic tight end. You know what I mean? So, but But I don't think they need any safeties. I actually have not even anytime there has been a safety, I've completely looked over it. That you don't pump.
Safety was my answer.
Yeah, you don't pump 3 picks last year and then also sign Xavier McKinney and then do
We're
that.
good.
So I truthfully, anytime someone brought up safety on a podcast I was listening to for the Packers, I skipped it. Any sort of prospect, I just skipped it because I was like, there's no shot. And that one I feel more comfortable. They will not draft a safety in the first 5 rounds of this draft. I would maybe bet you, but I feel good about that. So I don't know why you would take it.
All right. Next question I had. What do you think the odds are that they trade out of the first round?
Out of the first round, I think we could see a Jair Alexander situation where I think they would trade out and trade back in later. I think.
Well, they don't have a lot of time to trade back in.
No, but they work on these deals. If somebody calls, they'll move up. Like if the Chiefs wanted, my big thing is like if the Chiefs or Bills wanted to get an offensive lineman or something at 23, you like how the board's breaking, I could see them doing that for sure. And then you talk about like if a Donovan Ezeraku is still there, if somehow Jarek Harmon, I think he could get snaked before we even pick at 23. But I just mean there's certain guys that it's like if they're looking at their board, they're going, oh, the maths in a way that we'll get one of our 5 guys that we really like. I could see them trading back and doing that. Trading all the way out of the first round, it's not even like a directive. I think there's just enough players and the way the board's going to break, they're going to find a worthwhile player at 23. And unless they get some intel where they go, if we fall back 4 or 5, or all the way out of the first, and they're not going to take the guy we're eyeing, then maybe I could see it. But I don't think they're going to punt the pick because there won't be a player there that they think is good value. I don't think that's.
I have to also say, usually every year I sit here going, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Sure. It's a total Packer move, like stay up all night and then doesn't matter. They're not, but rarely does that happen. And also, you can't do it when the draft is in Green Bay. Like, right? You can't, like, this is the one year, like, to where you see a bunch of cheeseheads losing their mind on the first round pick more than any other team in attendance. Like, you can't kick the pick. You can't. You got to pick somebody. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I was curious your thoughts.
Yeah.
Do you see them trading up realistically?
Like I said, I think the only player that they would reach up, and you can kind of tell, Brian Gutekunst was the only GM at Tetairoa McMillan's pro day workout, private workout. I don't remember which one it was, but he was the only GM, and they flew the entire scouting staff. They announce who's coming in on the top 30 visits. Tetairoa McMillan is somebody that's been there, and I think there was even a report, Tetairoa, when speaking to the media, because a lot of the players who are there tomorrow for drafting had been there. I think I have a quote for him. He said on Tetairoa McMillan on interest from Packers, they've been showing me nothing but love throughout this whole draft process. I feel like I could fit in any offense well, but this one specifically. Yeah. So he's the only guy where I go trade up for that guy. If he's there at 17, go make a trade with the Bengals and go get him. That's how I feel. Do I think it'll happen? I don't know, but I would be to the moon and thrilled back if they somehow landed Tetairoa.
Okay.
In this draft. That's my pie in the sky. Like if most Packer fans just want them to stick and pick one guy, I want them to do this so bad. I just can't allow myself to be hurt when they don't. You know?
Which is what happens. Okay. Yeah. Last thing I want from you as the expert on the show. Yeah. You got to put it in. Who do they pick? Just so that you could come back and say, I called it. They picked exactly who I thought they would.
Okay.
One guy.
I'm going to counter you. Let's do a live mock, and I'll talk you through the process. I'll tell you who I think we're going to pick together once I do this draft. So I'm on PFF. I don't pay for it because I'm not a nerd. And also, I just don't have that kind of money, if I'm honest. But they allow you to do a 3-round mock draft with, but I can't trade. So I've been sticking and picking on this one. So here we go. All right. Diddling, diddling, ding. Yeah. So Tetairoa McMillan got drafted almost immediately. So just to go through here, just to talk about what we talked about, Jets picked up Tetairoa McMillan with the 7th pick. Calvin Banks went 12th. Jahdae Barron went 11. Will Johnson went 13. Michael Williams went 14. Derek Harmon went 16. Donovan Ezeraku, the 2nd round player I was telling you about, went 20. and Kenneth Grant went 22. So you're hearing all these guys that I said
Yep.
that I would love to.
And they're all getting picked.
What that does mean is Walter Nolan, the Super Packersy pick, is there.
Yep.
Emeka Ibuka is still there. Matthew Golden is still there. So out of these three guys, I think it's boring to do the Super Packers one.
I thought you said Golden. It'd be Golden.
I said I could see it. If he fell, same thing with Ibuka. In this mock, Ibuka has been going before the Packers. So the fact that he's here, let's take him. You know what? Let's do it, Packers fans. Let's draft our first wide receiver. And if it were my druthers, Emeka Ibuka versus Matthew Golden, Ibuka's way more willing. He's shown on tape that he can block. And I think you just let the wide receivers in that room figure it out. I mean, if he's better than Jaden Reed, it's like, well, then figure it out, Jaden Reed, or, you know, and like I said, I think he can play on the boundary. So on the first pick, I'm going to draft Emeka Ibuka. So we have a little time. But yeah, like I said, a lot of those guys have been going through. So fun fact, the thing I've been doing a lot this time is I start looking at, I've been looking at, if I take a wide receiver, we can start kind of talking about some of those defensive line concerns. So the issue is on this specific, on this thing right here, we have TJ Sanders, who I did mention as somebody I thought they would take all day long. I think he grades out well. Also Jared Ivey out of Ole Miss. So Walter Nolan's counterpart. Darian Porter is sitting there at 64. He's a cornerback out of Iowa State. He's 6'4", 200 pounds. I like him. I haven't taken him yet in a draft. You know, let's do it. I'm going to take Darian Porter, knowing that TJ Sanders, who I think is more than a reasonable pick, and Jared Ivey are there too, at least by PFF's board about player availables. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take Darian Porter to answer our cornerback question.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yep.
So right now,
this is... I haven't taken pass rush, but that's fine.
Yeah.
That's my number one concern. So, and now we're in our third pick. It's fine.
So this is where I'm talking about with our third round pick. This is where these guys tend to be a little bit faster, like more available. So much so that let me get back. So CJ West, the guy I was talking about who tested off the charts. We have Kyle Kennard, somebody who also tested really well. Elijah Roberts, Ashton Gillott, a guy I told you I really liked. These are all players that are available at this pick. I'm just, for the sake of buttoning up my own conversation, I'm just going to check something real quick here. Vamp, how are you feeling about this draft so far, Josh?
I will tell you that I hate it. So
you hate it? Okay.
I hate it because I just care about pass rush. That's all.
Yeah.
That's my main concern. And also now you're in the third round. And the Gutekunst and the Packers are always, they just knock it out of the park with third round picks. Third round picks always pay off. Not. And so, I'm just like, perfect. So now the third round pick will be a bust, and then we'll be in the fourth, fifth, and now at this point, it's over, and I'll just be complaining all year again about how our defense can't get to the quarterback or create any pressure.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, I hate that very much, John.
Okay.
This mock draft you've done on the show is not to my liking, which is also very realistic to how the actual draft will go.
Well, I made my pick while you were
okay.
I checked the consensus big board. I think Dane Brugler does the beast. It's fantastic. I got my guy Ashton Gillotti. It's probably not Gillotti. From Louisville in the third round. They gave me a B+, and it's a top 43% of drafts. That's where I'm that's what it's telling me right now. So
okay. Now that we had our fun and we did that, to end the podcast.
Yes.
To end our fun little draft episode here.
Yep.
Who are the Packers going to take with the 23rd pick?
Oh, you're asking me to do a lot of.
I'm telling you, one guy. You named a bunch.
Emeka Ibuka. I think they take Emeka Ibuka. They take They take a wide receiver in the first round for the first time in over 20 years. That's what happens. Gun to my head. I think if he's sitting there, if this board shakes out like that, I would be so happy. And that's all I can go off of is some sort of picks in front of this. So
okay,
that's where I'm landing.
Well, there you go, folks. There you have it. Now you know for a fact that he will not be drafted by the Green Bay Packers because that's how this all works. And and hopefully This aligned with what a lot of you draft heads out there were thinking as well. And it's all going to come together tomorrow night. We'll find out what they're going to do, and then it's going to be draft time through the weekend. And then we'll be back with a normal Sunday night into Monday episode that we will record, where we then complain about every decision that Goody did and how there were so many better options, and yet he didn't take them, because that's the fun of being a fan. And this, of course, is Don't Tell Me How to Fan. Thank you, John. Appreciate your expertise. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We appreciate you as well. Hope you have time watching the draft, especially if you're going to be in Green Bay. I will be there on Friday. I don't know how you'd see me. There's going to be a billion people there. But if you're around and you see me, say hi. Otherwise, we'll be happy to see you guys again on the Monday episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Tune in next time, because we are not done yet.
I believe in Joe Hendry. All right, that's enough.